Brian Schottenheimer just gave us a big hint as to why Jaden Blue didn't play in week 1. We'll break it down next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. He is Landon McCool, and on today's show, we are answering your Twitter questions. And we got a lot about Dallas Cowboy running back Jaden Blue, who was inactive in week 1, Landon. Brian Schottenheimer talked a little bit on Monday about why he didn't play. And his quote was, young players, it hits at different times. He's extremely talented, but you have to earn your chance to get out there. There has to be some consistency. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not shocked. I think he, again, there's a reason he was a later round pick. And I think a lot of it had to do with experience and kind of not being necessarily the bell cow of his backfield, which, is not surprising because he came from such a talented backfield, but it's also shouldn't be surprising that, despite having a very kind of limited college career, that he would need to kind of do some developing in the pros a little bit before he would be ready to kind of be deployed onto the field. Now, I think we've seen him at different points when he's healthy be a playmaker and be able to create. And I think that there's no doubt that he has the athletic and the vision traits that you want to be a running back who can make big plays. But the question becomes, can you trust him on the field when you need him to follow an assignment? Or if there's an audible that needs to be called, is he going to know what to do? And is he going to catch it and make the adjustment? So, I mean, again, these are I'm speculating, obviously, based on the specifics here, but these are examples of why it's important to make sure that you've got a running back out there who, is fully kind of engaged in the playbook and understands what he's doing, as opposed to just throwing him out there. And then every single time you're out there, you're throwing toss right or toss left, and you can't really do anything else with him out there.
We should also mention he's a 5th round pick. I think this would be a bigger story if this was your 2nd round pick at running back, the 40th overall guy, and he's not out there. It's pretty often that 5th round picks aren't active in week 1, right? It's just because it's this position, the running back position, and because of the guys in front of him, why everybody wants to see him out on the field. I get it. They need some juice at the running back spot. And Landon, honestly, I think you think halfway through the season, it's not hard to envision Javonte Williams is the bell cow, Jaden Blue being sprinkled in, Kevontae Turpin getting some touches, and that's just what their backfield looks like. We're just not there yet.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that that's what they're working towards. And look, it's a long season. I think we're going to say that a lot. We all need to remember that, because I think the situation's going to change and evolve and grow as the season goes on and as these players improve throughout the season, because that's part of the benefit, or the reality, I guess is a better way to put it, of having a very young team, is that as you play more and more football, they're going to improve. And then as they improve, it changes the angles of the teams that they're playing on offense and defense. So I think the same thing's here with Blue. I think we watched Miles Sanders have some real high highs with a long run, and then real low lows with the fumble that obviously was extremely consequential. I think all of us viewed that and said, hey, man, don't you think Jaden Blue probably could have finished that without the fumble, finished that touchdown in the end zone? And the truth of the matter is that there is a lot of subtlety to the running back position that I think Miles Sanders probably understands a little bit better than Jaden Blue. And let's be clear, again, there's a reason he was a 5th round pick. Jaden Blue had his own fumbling problem in college. It was actually pretty prevalent. So I just think that we need to kind of tap the brakes a little bit, just make sure this guy is where he needs to be before we deploy him out there. I'm excited to see him out there, but what I don't want to see him do is get out there, make a bunch of mistakes, and then kind of get into his head to the point where it affects his ability to be a useful player later in the season when you actually really need him.
We've also heard, and this comes from Brian Schottenheimer, how things kind of came together a little bit slower for him in the offseason. I think that was talking about some of the classroom stuff. And I just wonder, I mean, given that what Shotty said before, that maybe it's taking him a bit to pick up some of these protections. And honestly, that's probably the number one thing. Like, they played the Eagles last week. They're playing the Giants this week. The last thing that you want to have is to have a rookie running back out there that misses a block and gets your quarterback killed. He'll get there, but they're not going to rush this just because it's Jaden Blue and he's the most athletic running back on the roster.
Yeah, I mean they've already got a number of young players out there that they're counting on to be key cogs in their pass protection, including Tyler Guyton and obviously Booker as well. So the last thing you need is deploy another guy out there who's kind of your safety net there, the last piece of the movable piece in your protection scheme, and have him not understand what's happening there. And again, that's not shocking. Like, he probably wasn't asked to do a bunch of protection in Texas. It's not surprising that he's kind of had a difficult learning curve. And you add in the fact that he missed some time in training camp. Like, none of this is a negative slight on Blue. It's just the reality of the situation for a rookie running back.
One more interesting update from Brian Schottenheimer, Perrion Winfrey, who injured his back the week before the Eagles game. He is going on the injured reserve list. He's going to miss at least the next 4 games. We really haven't heard exactly what the back injury is, but we saw him limping pretty good. It sounds like he's going to be out for a while. How big of a loss is this for Dallas?
Well, I mean, it certainly it hurts their depth in a way, that a position that obviously the Cowboys don't want to lose any depth, and I feel like they had some positive returns from the defensive tackle position based on where it was before the trade in this game. But and they did that without Winfrey, obviously. But I think that there was hopes that he would come back in and just be a solid part of that rotation. Now I wonder if you aren't looking, for other opportunities, other bodies to come in just to kind of be part of the rotation. Obviously Mozzie was a healthy scratch, even with Winfrey out with an injury. So it'll be interesting to see, does that mean just more of Mozzie? Do they go get a body? I just think it's unfortunate because we saw him have such a great training camp and look so good. And it still is kind of hard to gauge exactly what sort of player we have in Winfrey, because it's only been in training camp and he's shined a little bit in preseason. But yeah, now we're gonna have to wait a little bit longer to kind of see him unveil in Cowboys uniform.
They really needed Perrion Winfrey before the Kenny Clark trade, but I was more excited to watch Winfrey after they got Clark, because to me, he's like the perfect guy to bring in off the bench who can spell Clark, who can play the 3, who can play the 1. He's one of these guys who gets up the field. He gets off the ball quickly. I don't necessarily think you're going to miss him because it's not like they've had him, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, probably more snaps for Solomon Thomas, maybe more snaps for Marshawn Nealand inside. We'll see more of Jay Toia, and we'll see if Mozzie Smith can get on the field. I think the hope is that they get Winfrey back at some point. Maybe you get him back by mid-October and you add him to the defensive line. But more than anything, it's just a bummer because we were really excited to see Winfrey.
Yeah, just because it was exactly that, the potential that he could be something better than what you expected when you signed him, based on what we saw in training camp. So just an unfortunate situation, but he, again, like you said, it's a long season, so he'll be back in mid-October and still have plenty of season left to kind of show us exactly what he's got.
All right, let's talk about George Pickens, who had a relatively quiet week 1 for the Dallas Cowboys. Are we concerned about some of the route running and the lack of targets? We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from putting off projects, while industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. And if you need parts fast for a project, Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. I know for me, sometimes I want to get a project done, but I don't want to wait for the parts to come in. Supply House is there to help you out. Join the free Trademaster program today and score some serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHNFL5 for 5% off your first order. That is supplyhouse.com, SHNFL5 for 5% off your first order. Real people, real service. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. The NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium, surrounded by fans and cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle. I hate it. I hate having to deal with the ticket process, login screens, the prices jumping at checkout. It's frustrating. It's no fun at all. But that's why I use Game Time now, the app that gives you the advantage right back to the fans. It's fast, it's easy, and it's backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all the fees are included. So the price that you see is the price that you pay. I've been looking to go to some more football games this year, and Game Time is the only app that I'm going to use to book my tickets. It's so easy. A couple taps and you're ready to go. It's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way that I've previously bought tickets. So download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that is promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket. Go download Game Time today. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Landon, this next question comes from Howie. He wants to know, are you guys concerned about George Pickens and the lack of targets and some of the route running questions coming out of week one?
I'm not really concerned about either yet. I'm definitely keeping an eye on both. I think the targeting thing, it will sort itself out. I think he's going to. There's just going to be times when the teams are going to decide to try to take away CeeDee Lamb, and when that happens, you're definitely going to need to be feeding him targets. And I think that's going to be a huge part of the Cowboys offense, trying to maintain the kind of seesaw nature of keeping defenses guessing, right? I didn't love everything that I saw on film from him. I mean, I certainly can't, certainly have to say that. There was some times when it was very clear that he wasn't the primary target in the concept, and he ran the route in that way. I don't think it was like regularly. I don't know that it was every single time that he wasn't the target. I wouldn't say that, but it was that combined with the kind of, that block that he threw at the dude's neck, that got a penalty called on him. It's that kind of stuff where it's like a lack of attention to detail really can kind of come back to haunt you. So I do think that it is something to keep an eye on. The kind of picture in total, of the kind of lack of concentration at times from him. But it's also early in the season. So I think, a lot of these situations kind of for these players can get evened out as time goes on. The issue is that obviously Pickens has a reputation with this kind of thing. So,
and that's what I was going to say is that this is my concern when the Cowboys traded for Pickens. It has nothing to do with his talent level, because he's as talented as any receiver in the league. And you see that, like, even on some of the catches that he made in this game, like, he is just an unreal athlete. And it's not like he didn't make any kind of impact. He did have 3 catches for 30 yards. He did draw a big pass interference that put them, right at the 1 yard line where they scored a touchdown. It's just the little things that add up over the course of a season that make you wonder, is this somebody that we want to be investing in long-term? I'll give you an example from last year. Pittsburgh played on a Christmas Day game against the Chiefs, and Pickens was lined up on the outside. He was supposed to run a vertical route to occupy the safety, so that Freiermuth could be wide open in the middle of the field for a touchdown. Didn't run the route, ran about 5 yards off the line of scrimmage and stopped. Justin Reed saw that, went right to the safety, made the interception, and that was the game. That situation basically played out exactly on Thursday night with Jake Ferguson. Pickens was at the bottom of the field, didn't run a route. The safety was able to get over there and crack Jake Ferguson. Now, he did get a 15-yard penalty, but Ferguson might have been able to catch that ball off the rebound. You score 7 points there. and we're not talking about a Miles Sanders fumble. It's those kind of little things that can be the difference between a winning player and a losing player.
100%. And I think, we need to make sure that like this doesn't become a regular thing, with the Cowboys. It's obviously been a thing with the Steelers. The hope is that you can hold him a little bit more accountable here than maybe the Steelers were able to, just because I think he wants to be here more than he wanted to be with the Steelers. And I think that he's built a relationship with CD Lamb and that sort of thing. So, my hope is that, they go through this, they make the corrections, and you just see some better effort and some better, smarter football at times. Cause it's, again, like I think if it's a concentration issue, if it's a trying to keep him in the game issue, I think that's more manageable. If he starts to get into the more knuckleheady stuff, like, again, that block was at that dude's head. At no point was that like an attempt to actually block anybody.
No.
So we can't have that kind of stuff that's, costing us penalty yards as well on a regular basis. There's just, with this sort of player, this sort of talent, you kind of bake some of that in, but it cannot be to the point where you're getting negative a return from a guy like Pickens. It just, you can't rise to that level. And if that means you need to, make a more concerted effort to bring him in and be part of the offense early on. The Cowboys have had to do that with other players in the past.
Sure.
That's not like a record history breaking sort of situation, but that's on Schottenheimer to make sure that he's getting his players involved so they're staying involved and not just checking out. And look, should he be checking out? Absolutely not. But he's your wide receiver too right now. It's the price that you're paying for that sort of talent. So you got to find a way to make it work.
Yeah, and that's why Brian Schottenheimer gets paid the big bucks. He's got to figure out a way to keep both of these receivers happy. And I think they will. And he talked about it during Monday's press conference. Like, hey, there's going to be weeks where the target distribution isn't like this and that Pickens is going to have more targets. So it's all going to get worked out in the end. We need to see that be the case. But also, if you're not getting targets, you can't be on the other side of the field moping and pouting, because that's ultimately going to hurt the offense. And it's going to hurt your ability to get targets. And that in turn is going to hurt your ability to make a lot of money down the road. So these are all some of the concerns that people had when the Cowboys traded for Pickens. They needed to upgrade the number 2 receiver spot. They did that. But this is also why he was available.
Yeah. And they just need to either learn to, make those corrections if they can, or deal with the consequences and try to mitigate them as much as possible.
Bingo. All right, let's talk about some playoff goals for the Cowboys. Can they still make it? Will they? We'll talk about that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. We absolutely love FanDuel here on the Locked On Cowboys podcast, and we're so excited that the NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure that you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love FanDuel because it allows me to bet however I like. Like, I like the futures market. I like going in on a Monday morning after all the games and looking at, okay, who's going to win the division? Who's the favorite to be the MVP? Who's winning the Defensive Player of the Year award? That's my favorite way to bet, and FanDuel allows me to make those bets. It's quick, it's easy, and it's the best way to add just a little bit more energy to your Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That is FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL podcast, 2 episodes every single day. One in the morning with Tyler the Madman Rowland, another with Tony Wiggins in the afternoon. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, Landon, let's get this question from Evan. He wants to know, do we think the Cowboys can still make the playoffs this year? And what do they need to do to accomplish that?
Yeah, I certainly think it's possible, right? Like, I think it's in the realm of outcomes that still seems capable for the Cowboys. I think a lot of what needs to happen is the kind of thing that happens every year, where the chaos of the NFL season, the teams that we think are going to be good turn out to be not as good, and there's just a little bit of kind of turnover and parity as we've seen year to year, and I think that they need to just continue to grow as a team. I think we still think of this as this kind of Dak Prescott window of the Dallas Cowboys, but the truth of the matter is that this is an exceptionally young team right now, and they are going to grow and get better as the season goes on. And so they're not a finished product. And the hope is that if you can steal some games in this very tough schedule along the way, get to the end and just play around that area of where most of the kind of NFC teams are leveled at, then you're going to have an opportunity there at the end to make in the tournament. And then once you're in the tournament, we've seen kind of all bets are off. So I think making the playoffs is an extremely solid goal to shoot for the Cowboys. I think, the track of where this team was headed changed abruptly right before the season when they traded Micah Parsons. I think that's fair to say, but I don't think that that the goal of making the playoffs should be any different. And then once you get into the playoffs, again, we'll see how this team grows over the course of the season and where they can go.
I think it would be a mistake to look at like the later part of their schedule and try to figure out how many wins they're needed in that stretch, because so much is going to change between week 2 and week 10. Like there's going to be big injuries that happen that change some of these games. There's going to be teams that we think are really good after week 1 that are completely out of the playoff picture by the time we get to week 10, week 11. So what I like to do is look at it in like 4 game sections, right? The first month of the season, you already played the Eagles, you're 0-1. You play the Giants at home, the Bears on the road, the Packers at home. You need to come out of September at 2-2 at the very worst, right? If you can come out at 2-2, the next group of games, you play the Jets, the Panthers, the Commanders, and the Broncos. You go 2-2 or better in that stretch. You keep yourself alive. That's all the Cowboys have to do is just stay at 500 each month, and they'll have a shot when we get to December and January.
Yeah, and again, I think that this first month there's a lot of chaos, and so if you can remain steady and find a way to steal a game here or there, I think it's not unrealistic to hope that you get out of the first 2 months of the season at 500, right? And then from there, at that point, you're going to be a different team than you were right now, right? Like you're going to grow a lot. A lot of these young players are going to have more experience under their belt. They're going to be better players because they've got talent. They just need experience. And so that's why it's always a conversation about, let's talk about it after Thanksgiving, is because these teams just change through the natural course of the season because the NFL is a young man's game.
Here's the other thing that needs to happen. The offense has to become more consistent. Like they were fantastic in the first half. They didn't score a point in the second half. And I understand, like, you had a fumble, the rain delay threw some things off. Okay, whatever. That's one game. That can't be the way that the season goes. You can't be just where they're really good in one half and then only okay in another half. They're going to have to be consistently good because the defense is going to be very up and down. Like the defense might have some games where they look good, they get some stops. They might have some other where they don't.
Well, the defense is specifically, where it feels like the growth needs to happen. And maybe on the offensive line specifically needs, those are the two spots, the defense as a whole and the offensive line, that you are hoping that with time they gel, they grow a lot. And with the defense too, it's like, if you can find a way to make some big plays here and there, to rely on your offense early, you get overshown back. Some of these younger guys start to grow into their roles a little bit. I think things will kind of look a lot better on the defensive side than they did early in the season. But even then, like things like the pass rush, even though there was only one sack, the Cowboys were able to get a high number of pressure on the pass plays that they faced with the Eagles. Let's see if that continues to trend. You're not going to have the same pass rush you had with Micah Parsons, but maybe you're able to, like we've talked about, spread the talent around enough that you've just got a very difficult to deal with defense, and that combined with an offense that can put points on the board is certainly enough to get you in the tournament in the NFC.
my thing is that, like, I expect the defense to be very up and down, and honestly, probably more
Yeah.
downs than up. The offense, they can't be, right? They've got so much more money and draft picks invested. They got 3 first-round picks on the offensive line. They've got 2 receivers who they've invested a lot in. That unit has to carry them. And whether they carry them to the wins or not, but they need to be scoring 27, 30 points every
Yeah.
single game. And if it's like what we saw in the second half, like against the Giants this week, and you only put up 21 points, that's where I'll be concerned of, like, hey, this team's just not ready to make a push for the postseason.
Yeah, I think the thing that was encouraging for us, at least for me, is that you saw a team that had the talent to do what you need them to do at some point. I think that was confirmed, and that was exciting. Now, what you need to see them do is tighten up, right? Like, I mean, you just and I think that that's what it was. It wasn't a play calling issue or a coaching issue. It was, needing your superstar receiver to just not drop 2 key passes, needing your tight end not to drop a pass, needing your backup running back not to fumble the ball after making a big play.
Need your number 2 receiver not to get a boneheaded penalty inside the red zone. And, all those kind of little things add up.
Correctable.
Yeah.
Correctable.
But those are the difference between beating a good team and losing by 4.
That's right. And so if they can find a way to kind of clean that up, they're going to have an offense that can put points on the board, that can take some pressure off their defense until the defense can kind of grow up a little bit. And then we'll just see how it all kind of comes together in the later part of the season.
I don't think the playoffs shouldn't be an unrealistic expectation. Like, I know that their win total over at FanDuel 7.5, and everybody's been betting the under, but man, you watch a lot of those teams on Sunday and they have massive flaws, just like Dallas does. Even someone like Detroit, who, they were the number 1 seed last year. Their defense looks like it could be an issue. Their offensive line is a problem. You look at Seattle. Seattle was a 10-win team last year. They have trouble scoring the ball. So the Cowboys shouldn't feel too discouraged based on what we've seen coming out of week 1, but they've got to clean some things up going into week 2. That is it. Yeah, a lot of football left. That's it for today's show. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. Check out the podcast. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.